Well, officially, everyone, good morning again. I am Marisette Hassan, and I am the program coordinator for the South Carolina Coalition for the Care for the Seriously Ill, that we affectionately call CSI. That's right, we are all about the continuum of care and especially at the end of life. We welcome you to our annual virtual symposium. I want to give a shout out to our education committee led by our fearless leader, Wilma Rice, and they have put together a wonderful program for this week. Every morning this week from Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 9:30, we are having relevant topics related to end of life care, serious illness care. And so on yesterday, we kicked off the week really honoring our veterans and finding more about veterans eligibility and benefits that veterans can receive through hospice. So Alexis gave us a very informative presentation with some amazing resources as well. On today, I am excited because we have one of our committee members, one of our great friends, Morgan McCall, is with us today. And Morgan is going to talk with us about compassion fatigue, prevention, and self-care. If there's anybody out there that needs to know about this, put two hands up, put hearts up. I'm telling you, this is an area where I think we typically don't do the best job. So if you need to know about, and I see Morgan's got her hands up too, and she's the presenter today. So, it's a work in progress for us to do better about taking care of ourselves. Also want to give a shout out to our nurses this week for Nurses Week. And I found out from Jenny that this month is Mental Health Month and the color is green. Shout out also to Lori and Roper St. Francis. They have gotten some awards as well. So this month as well. So guys, lots of great things going on, and absolutely we are glad to have you here. Now, Morgan, last year you put out a challenge to us that we were to do better with PTO. So I'm going to put you on the spot and said, did you do better last year taking time off from work to do self-care?
Well, I've been doing better with my PTO probably since the pandemic hit.
Oh,
So my PTO balance runs low all the time. And in fact, today is my Friday because I'm taking the rest of the week off.
whoa, ho. Now, I'm telling you what, I'm excited about that. That is really good. I have to do a little bit better now that I'm in the land of independent consulting. I have to really build in that PTO time. So, but I have decided this year, and I started in March when I have a birthday, to get a monthly massage. So that's a part of my self-care regimen now. I have done two in a row, and I have one scheduled for Thursday, so I'm on track. And I do try to pamper myself about every 6 weeks with a pedicure. So that's a little bit of my self-care. So anyhow, we are going to find out from you other tips that we need to be doing. I want to know if anybody puts in the chat how they're doing with their PTO, getting that PTO balance low. And Morgan, thank you so much for what you do. You have been in the hospice industry for more than 12 years now. You are one of our serious illness conversation trainers, certified in hospice and palliative care. You see a lot with staff as well as with patients. So we know that you got some great information for us today. Take it away, my friend.
All right. Thank you so much, Marisette. And hi, good morning, everyone. Let me go ahead and get my screen shared here. Hopefully I do the right thing. Thumbs up all around if you can see what's happening. All right, cool. Well, I'm going to be closing this window so I can see that. So I won't necessarily be able to see your faces. So you guys just shout out to me if we need to stop for any reason. So we're going to talk a little bit about compassion fatigue today. And, as Marisette was asking for hands and hearts, both of my hands were up. I know when Wilma asked if I would do kind of a part two to this presentation, I said, well, maybe I should put on the disclaimer. I'm not sure how qualified I feel these days, but but definitely have seen the effects firsthand myself, and as I already said, really have taken intentional steps over the past several years to really prioritize this for not only me, but also the teams that I've served. And I'm sure that all of you can kind of relate to that. So I want to start with just kind of a reminder, here to everyone, how valuable the work is that you're doing. And a little quote from former First Lady, Miss Rosalind Carter. She said, "Caregiving is universal. There are only 4 kinds of people in the world: those who have been caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need caregivers." And I believe that everyone in this virtual room has chosen caregiving in some fashion as your professional endeavor in the world. And even if you're not doing direct patient care, you're caring for or serving those who do. And there may even be some who have cared for a loved one and experienced maybe burnout or compassion fatigue from a more personal perspective. So I kind of want to just start with a little bit of the why behind the what. Why is talking about the prevention of compassion fatigue important? Why is it worth your time and attention at this beautiful hour of 8 a.m.? Because the CDC has outlined that healthcare workers are facing what they describe as a severe mental health crisis. That's what we're in right now. Harassment, burnout, anxiety, depression rates are higher than they've ever been before, because exposure to daily human suffering takes an immense toll on our bodies, our minds, and our souls. 46% of all healthcare workers and 62% of nurses report burnout. Last year, 72,000 physicians left the profession unexpectedly. 34% of nurses say that they plan to leave the profession not related to retirement in the next year. Some of you are probably cringing because you're identifying with these statistics. And I want to say good, because awareness is the first step. So this message today is for all of you. Little disclaimer, obviously constant strain and stress can cause injury. Anxiety, depression, high stress levels, and related conditions should really be discussed with your healthcare provider. So this is not intended to offer or replace medical advice. And I don't have any financial relationships or conflicts of interest to disclose. A little bit of a temperature here in the room, because I know we did sort of insinuate that this was a part 2. Can you give me a heart or a thumbs up or some type of reaction if you did attend the presentation last year on this self-care, compassion fatigue, burnout prevention? Okay, got a couple in the room. So for those of you who weren't, don't worry. You don't have to have attended part 1 to tune in for this. But I do just want to say that last year's presentation really specifically focused on awareness of recognizing the different levels of stress in general, from that eustress to distress, the good stress to the bad stress, and the effects on the mind and body. So we're going to briefly review some of that again today, but we want to focus primarily on addressing these stressors for your teams and preventing it for yourself. All right, so to get started, I'm going to challenge the room to pull out your phones and scan the QR code on the screen, or go to menti, menti.com. And it will prompt you, if you go to Menti, to type in a code. If you click the QR code, then it will should take you right to our question. And we're going to do a little interactive exercise. Kind of get started. So again, we're going to send the QR code or go to menti.com and insert this code 536-08305. And we will be posed with a question. Here, it's going to be asking you, what do you think is the opposite of compassion fatigue? And I think it'll give you the option to put in about 3 different options, and you can resubmit as many times as you want. We already have a lot of answers here. Work-life balance, energetic, empathetic, fulfillment, joy, peace, peaceful, hopeful, enthusiastic, resilient, ooh, refreshed, I like it, relaxed, in tune, energized, content. These are really good responses, really good responses. Okay, thanks for sharing that. This is the goal, right, guys? So if compassion fatigue, and we'll talk more about that definition, is a place we don't want to be, and this is a place that we do, that's where we want our focus. And so we need to think, what brings these characteristics into our life? And embrace that. Great job. Thanks. Hope that was fun for you too. So when we think about common types of distress, and I think it's really easy to say, I'm stressed, my nerves are shot, right? But what exactly are you feeling? These are the 3 most common types of stress that healthcare workers encounter: our moral distress, our burnout, and our compassion fatigue. And I think it's really important to know exactly what type of distress you're experiencing so that you can address it appropriately. And also be able to recognize that in your teams for those of you that are in a leadership position. So we'll just do a really quick review. Again, some of this may look familiar to you. So we'll start with moral distress. Moral distress, when one knows to do the right thing, but external constraints, conflicts, dilemmas, or uncertainty make it nearly impossible to pursue the right course of action. This is really, really common for healthcare workers who are caring for critically ill patients. Triggers tend to revolve around end-of-life care, perhaps performing care that's considered futile, providing false hope, inadequate staffing, maybe working with a colleague that you consider incompetent, that you don't trust, situations with bullying, lack of resources, pressures to decrease costs, ineffective communication, right? So when you're feeling sort of that moral compass that's, causing you that heart palpitation, addressing moral distress is primarily addressed around the awareness of the fact that you feel it, number one, talking about it, whether that's individually with a trusted mentor or a colleague, or in a group, such as through resilience rounds, receiving education, which you're doing today, kudos to you, right? Or providing training, right, to your team on this topic. And then certainly, if you're in a position of authority, to implement practices or policies that help prevent it. Our second type of distress, burnout, right? The World Health Organization actually put out an ICD-10 recognizing burnout as an occupational phenomenon. Did you guys know that? It's Z73. Z73. It's an actual ICD-10. And I think that that's really important that they did that. So this is a syndrome that is conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. So how do you know that you're experiencing burnout? You may have feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion, increased mental distance from one's job, negative or cynical feelings related to your job, hate to go to work, right? Hate to get there, mad at anyone who talks to you, and then reduced efficacy and productivity. Really, guys, and I don't have to tell you this, but our aging population, increased pressure in the settings that we're working, and persistent healthcare shortages are really all threats to not only the care and safety of our patients, but the health of ourselves, our staff, and general job satisfaction, right? Achieving the things that were in our word cloud. As the natural commitment, right, in our jobs is to take care of others. I think if we were to survey the room and say, why did you choose your profession? 80–90% would say, because I wanted to help people, right? It's a cliche, but I'm sure that almost all of you said it at some point. I want to make a difference in the world. I want to do something good for other humans, right? I want to walk away at the end of the day knowing I did something good today. Anybody else think that? Did they feel that? Did you say that once upon a time? Maybe it was many moons ago, right? And I think many people might worry, do I still feel that same zest, right? I've been riding the train a long time. But we must remember that we've got to take care of ourselves in order to be the best version that we can to take care of others, right? Whatever that looks like. Causes here it can start anywhere, whether it's an organizational factor, practice environment, all the way to rules and regulations, right? And we know that the effects are profound. And we talked a lot about that last year. And I think, we know that this can affect patient outcomes. We know that it can affect safety. We know that it has an impact on our own well-being. But, I must say that clinician burnout, and we talked about some of the numbers of folks that are actually leaving the profession because of this, right? It's very expensive. There's a major economic impact on our healthcare system because of this, right? It pre-COVID, and I don't know what the numbers are now, it's probably higher, but pre-COVID, it was $40,000 to $60,000 to replace one nurse. So if we have 34% of nurses saying, I'm planning to leave the profession in the next year because I just don't want to do this anymore, that is very, very expensive, right? So organizations, and again, for those of you that are in a position of authority or have influence on those people, organizations really have a fiscal responsibility to invest in solutions that promote well-being to prevent this. I've got a few little inventories here that do help to measure burnout. The MBI HSS is specifically for medical personnel. It's not free. There is a charge to take it, but again, as we talk about investment, then that's worth it. There's also a few other burnout inventories or surveys that are listed here: the Copenhagen, the Aldenburg, single item burnout. And maybe take note of that these are ways that you can objectively, look and see what is the burnout among my team. And then we're going to jump to our last stressor or level of distress. And this is where we're going to spend the majority of our time is on compassion fatigue, right? The opposite of compassion satisfaction, but I liked all the words that you all gave better. And what I'll say is that I think it's important to recognize, because a lot of times you hear, I'm so burnt out. And compassion fatigue is different from burnout in that you may feel sad or numb versus displeased, right? And I'm sure that you can see how all of these three types of distress are really interrelated and can yield to the other type of stress in many ways. And I believe that a lot of folks experience compassion fatigue, but they don't really know how to define it. So they don't use that terminology. And my hope, again, is just to bring a little awareness to this particular level. Because the expectation that we can be immersed in suffering and loss daily and not be touched by it is really as unrealistic as expecting to be able to walk through water and not get wet. So we would define this as the physical, mental, and emotional weariness resulting from prolonged exposure to caring for those in significant pain or emotional distress. when people feel excited and pleased by the work that they do, helping others, right? And finding meaning in your work, seeing the value that you bring to the world, joy in your role, that would be compassion satisfaction. And that's where we want to be. So how do we get, too far, how do we get from compassion satisfaction to compassion fatigue? And there's a little graph here, which is a little convoluted, but we'll walk through it. It starts with exposure to suffering, right? When a new patient arrives, they're often in pain, they're experiencing fear, they're seeking reassurance that they're going to be okay, right? And so what is the natural thing that we do? We give empathy, right? We have an empathetic response. We show concern. Again, we talked about, we enter this field that we're in because we care about people. We want to support their health, right? When they're exposed to pain and fear, we respond with empathy. This is natural concern about the well-being of the patient, right? And if everything goes well, then we get to enjoy the feeling that we truly made a difference, right? That we were able to help them live a healthier existence. What happens when things don't go well? Right? And for many of the folks in this room, you're dealing with patients with serious illness, life-threatening illness, end of life regularly, right? So there are more times than not that things don't necessarily go well, right? So when we have that prolonged exposure to suffering or a long-term exposure, it's easy to kind of be feeling this residual compassion stress, right? And when we leave that unattended, right, then these feelings can manifest as those traumatic memories, right? And that starts to affect the physical, the emotional, the cognitive, and even the behavioral health, right, of all of you. And when that happens, we become detached. And so under so much stress and fatigue, medical staff will experience that detachment where they're not really able to use their empathetic abilities anymore when they're caring for their patients, right? You might hear people say, I just feel like a zombie. I just feel like I'm just, walking around. I've heard, and I don't want to pick on nurses, but I am a nurse, right? So I often will say nurses, but really it could be social worker, it could be occupational therapist, it could be anybody, right? I've heard so many healthcare workers that will say, well, my heart, I don't even respond anymore. My heart is so hard, and they feel incapable of feeling emotion. And when that's the case, compassion fatigue has really fully taken hold. So I'm going to ask some questions here. Do not raise your hands. Don't necessarily give, reactions or anything of that nature, but just kind of think to yourself, yes or no. Okay. Easy, easy peasy. We're going to run through these really quick. I know it's a lot. But if you do answer yes to these, keep a little tally on your hand. Okay. Do you find it difficult to feel hopeful on a regular basis? Does the stress of your patients' lives affect you personally? Do you find it difficult to process and recover from the daily trauma of your job? Are you left feeling that no matter what you do for your patients, you aren't making a meaningful impact? Do you find it difficult to feel settled about your unfinished personal business? Do you ever find yourself withdrawing from family or friends? Has your use of drugs or alcohol increased recently? Have your sleeping patterns changed? Does it feel like those close to you don't understand what you're going through? Do you ever have flashbacks about former patients in your care? Are you able to leave your professional experiences at work rather than bringing them home? Do you feel continually tired regardless of adequate rest? If you answered yes to 5 or more of these questions, consider talking to someone about what you've been feeling because you may be at risk for compassion fatigue. And I would say if you answered yes to maybe a few, right, then know that there's still opportunity for some prevention, right? Know that putting yourself first isn't selfish. Create emotional boundaries, right? Find your support network, because there are a lot of other people who understand your daily challenges, and can help you recharge. We've got to be here for each other, right? Compassion fatigue, vicarious trauma, and burnout are very real conditions that can afflict healthcare providers. However, they are not inevitable. Prevention is key. Develop a strong social support system, find a unique hobby, practice good sleep hygiene, exercise daily, and eat a healthy diet. Taking a well-deserved vacation can help too. I can't see the chat, but I hope that you guys gave updates that you're doing a good job taking your PTO. A well-deserved vacation is a really nice rest and relax and recharge time. So if you tuned in last year, you might recall that I believe we talked a lot about the idea of work-life balance, right? Or the preferred term, work-life harmony, right? I believe I even saw this outlined in our word cloud at the beginning of the presentation. Some folks had dropped work-life balance and harmony in the opposite of compassion fatigue. So let's revisit this just for a moment, right? At the core of an effective work-life harmony definition are two key everyday concepts that are really relevant to each of us, right? And it's daily achievement and enjoyment, which seems so simple, right? Like that's not that hard. But you want to kind of ask the big question, which is why. And I often think about this, the why behind the what, you know, whatever your why is. Why do you want a better income? Why do you want a new house? What, kids through college? Why do you want to do a good job today? Why do you come to work at all? Right? I think most of us already have a good grasp on the meaning of achievement, right? But I think that the concept of enjoyment is really sort of far-fetched in some ways. Enjoyment doesn't just mean I'm happy, right? It encompasses pride, satisfaction, celebration, love, a sense of well-being, all the joys of living, right? So achievement and enjoyment are on the front and the back of the coin of value in life. You can't really have one without the other. So if you're trying to live sort of this one-sided life, that's why so many so-called successful people aren't necessarily as happy as they should be, because you can't get the full value from life without both achievement and enjoyment. And if you focus on that every day, then it helps you avoid sort of the as soon as trap, right? Where, as soon as I do this, as soon as I get that, as soon as this rolls around, right? What is your purpose? I know I ask myself that all the time. But I think if we sort of take a pause and say, you know what, let's just make it simple. I want to achieve something today, and I want to enjoy something today. And if I do both of those things today, I'm going to have a pretty good day. And if I do both of those things every day, I'm going to have a pretty good life. It doesn't have to be so profound, so deep all the time. Let's get back to the bare basics, right? So what are our primary concepts here to achieve and enjoy? So first, we're going to say, stop searching for balance. There is no such thing as, when we say work-life balance, it's a very common term. But again, let's merge that to that work-life harmony, right? nothing's perfect, right? And so take that pressure away. This kind of gives you permission to do what you need to do to be attentive to the needs of your moment. The needs of my moment today are very different from the needs of my moment tomorrow. And I already told y'all I'm going to be on vacation the rest of the week, so my needs will be light. Be present. If you're at work, be at work, right? Focus on the activity at hand. When you're with your family, be with your family. Leave work matters out of your mind, right? This way you're giving your full attention to whatever you're doing in that specific moment. Manage your time well. Has anybody ever heard the term failing to plan is planning to fail? Do we have anybody in the audience that struggles with time management? Causes a lot of stress. If you do, we're going to talk about that in just a minute. Stay active. Baby steps. You don't have to be in the gym every day, okay, guys? But taking a quick walk around your unit or a quick walk to the mailbox if you work from home, honestly, it makes a big difference if you're kind of feeling blah. And then rest. You got to sleep at night, guys. When you don't get regular sleep, your brain's in a fog. You don't make new memories. It weakens your immune system. It slows down your brain's ability to process during the day. Make sure you're getting adequate rest. Then we have an endless screen of good self-care options. And if you tuned in last year, you saw this before. I'm not going to go through all of them, but read over this. Say, is there anything here that I'm not doing? I love what Wilma shared, not Wilma, Marisette shared at the beginning about getting a monthly massage and going to get a pedicure every 6 weeks. So those are great self-care items. And when you do that, say to yourself, I'm doing this for myself. Just because something is listed here doesn't mean that it's good self-care for you. So let's go back to our primary simple goal. We want to achieve and we want to enjoy. So find your joy. I'll give you an example. Crossword puzzles. Does anybody out there like crossword puzzles? I don't know if we have any crossword puzzle lovers in the room. Maybe you're like me. Crossword puzzles stress me out, okay? Some people might say, this gets me in the zone. This takes everything away from my mind. I can just focus on that. I love doing crossword puzzles. Good for you. I love that for you, friend. Not me, right? That causes me stress. So I'm not going to do a crossword puzzle for self-care. That would be punishment for me. But for other people, they might enjoy that, right? So find your joy. And then if it's something that brings you to that word that you put in the beginning, then do more of that in your life. And I can't stress the vacation time enough. And so I'll share the statistic again. A recent study showed that 55% of Americans did not take all their vacation time last year. 55%. These workers gave up 658 million vacation days last year. Can you believe that? Some 28% of workers told Glassdoor survey that they fear getting behind while they're sitting on a beach. Another 17% actually say they fear losing their job. 19% don't take all of their days in hopes that it will give them an edge for a promotion. While 13% are competitive and wanting to outperform their colleagues. Take your days. Not worth it. Not worth it, guys. All right. Screenshot that if you want to. Okay. For those with time management issues, this is for you. Managing your time better. Okay. Knowing what tasks must be done first is key. Do I have any to-do list folks in the room? You got a bunch of these? Oh, nope, you can't see it. Because I've got this screen on. I've got 3 to-do lists in front of me here. I'm going to share this one with you. This is why I have multiple to-do lists. I don't like to lump everything together. And maybe this doesn't work for you. If it doesn't, that's okay. If this interests you, take notes. If you're making a list, you like to color code, do what works for you. But consider these 4 boxes here. Is it urgent and important? Does it mean I have to do this today, right? And maybe you make a square. I like to make 4 separate lists, but maybe you make a square. You start with your urgent and important. Your next box is important, but not urgent, right? So if I get everything done in my first box, then I'll do this box, right? Maybe I do it later today, maybe I do it early tomorrow, later in the week. Then we have less important, not urgent. Once boxes 1 and 2 are done, I can do the stuff that's here. And then our not important, not urgent, we do those last. You know what? That might get done in 6 months. I don't know. It's nice to have, but it's not real high on the list. When you're lumping everything together in one line, just as you think about it, that can kind of cause, maybe for some, a little bit more stress, because you kind of have to peel through and, well, this is more important than that, and that's just really on the list just to be there. Does anybody like crossing things off their list? Do you have any C types out there that like crossing things off their list? That's me. Sometimes there's people putting things on the list just so they can cross it out. That's okay. Just put it in the right box. So consider this. Take a screenshot of this if you like it. Plan your day out. Remember, failing to plan is planning to fail. Set realistic, measurable goals, right? And protect your time. Limit the commitments that you make. For those of you that like to use your electronic calendar for work, I suggest sort of considering to yourself, realistically, how long is it going to take me to achieve this task? And then go put that task on your calendar and block off the amount of time that you expect that you're going to be working on that. That way, that time is uninterrupted. I don't know about you all, but my company uses Teams, and on the new Teams, you have a little color that pops up with your name. And if it's green, it means you're available, which means you're getting questions and emails and calls. And if it's red, meaning there's a meeting or something on my calendar, it means she's busy right now. So if I've already blocked off that time on my calendar to work on something, the whole organization can see Morgan's busy. I'm working on something. When I'm done with this, I'll get back to you, right? Maybe that works for you, maybe it doesn't. For those of you that are doing direct patient care, particularly sort of the concept of transitioning home is a really good self-care practice, right? Do you practice shedding your professional role as you transition from work to home? If you don't, I encourage you to start doing that, right? Maybe listening to music, maybe sitting in silence because it's been loud all day, right? Whatever works best for you. Leave your badge in your car. Don't take it in, right? If you use a stethoscope, don't walk in with it around your neck, right? If you have a work device such as a tablet or a work phone, if you're not on call, turn that bad boy off. Update your voicemail to give people instructions on what to do after hours, right? Obviously changing out of your physical workflows, having an exercise that you perform every day. If it's a value to you, engaging in a spiritual or religious activity, right? And then developing stronger relationships with others. These are the people that you're seeking support from, family and friends, your faith community leaders, your spiritual care, mentors, chaplains, managers, professional mentors. Another really good self-care item is setting healthy professional boundaries. Where do you draw your line in the sand? Why do you need to draw a line? Right? Because boundaries define limits, and this protects you. And each of us has to take responsibility for how we allow other people to treat us. You teach them how to do that, When you go on vacation and your away email says, "Hi, I'm out of the office until Monday, da 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 da. If this is urgent, please text me at." You're taking paid time off. Why would you say that anybody needs to contact you? Who taught you to do that? If that's the case, you're teaching others that it's okay to contact you when you're off. And is that really the expectation that you want to set forth? Give yourself greater peace, more time, more energy, more compassion for yourself, right? Greater confidence and self-esteem while you're decreasing your stress, your anxiety, your resentment. Obvious sort of examples where you need to set healthy professional boundaries might be, caring for someone that may kind of affect care and blur the boundary lines, right? If you have a neighbor or someone that you grew up with, being their caregiver might not necessarily always be the best thing, especially if you're emotionally invested in their lives. And then, some areas might be gray. If anybody out there works in home-based care, and family approaches you and says, "Hey, would you mind working privately for us on the weekend? On the days that you're off, could you come and do X, Y, and Z for mom?" That might feel a little gray, right? You need to set a boundary there. Sorry, I'm chatting and not even paying attention to the words on my slide here. So, looking at social relationships versus professional relationships, sort of define those. Social's any non-professional relationship that's developed and maintained in your personal life, right? This is voluntary. No time frame, no payment, no formal knowledge, right? No training to have a relationship here. And professional relationships are time limited, right? And focused on providing specific services for another, typically for a fee, whether that's a direct fee or whether that's from their insurance, right? This is directed towards a goal. And once the goal is met, that relationship ends. And I know that this can be hard, especially if you've cared for someone for a very, very long time. And, I'm guilty of this. 10 years ago, when I got married, I had family members of patients sitting in the audience. It got blurry. Cared for those people a lot. It is a responsibility of the professional to maintain boundaries, right? Keeping things professional guides positive relationships with our patients and our colleagues. So it's important to utilize your skills within your scope of practice, delegate when appropriate, say no when appropriate. Don't be afraid to do that. Team health. Positive work environment is key, right? As we think about prevention of our distress types, right? Our moral distress, our burnout, our compassion fatigue. We spend just as much time with our coworkers as we do with our family in many instances. So let's make it good, right? Work out conflict when it first arises, build each other up, support one another, do team building. Feel like in many ways, team building sort of fell to the wayside a little bit, particularly during the height of the pandemic. It was a little bit forgotten. If that happened with your team, reignite it. It's important. Attributes of healthy teams. So if a team is healthy, they have clear roles with mutual purpose, shared team values, established lines of accountability, strong leadership, established team health activities, demonstrated respect of individuals and the team, clearly stated performance expectations, open communication, and folks that are engaged, people that speak up. You guys may have heard the quotes where, people say, when passionate people go quiet, you should be concerned. So if you look at these characteristics and you think, oh, wow, that describes my team. Great. You guys are doing a fantastic job. Keep it up. If you're looking at this and you think, I don't know who that is. It's not my team. I do not work in that environment. Well, we'll do something about it. Right? Strive for that. Spend too much time at work to be miserable. So what do you do? How do we maximize team health and resilience? And I think that there's opportunity here, not just for managers, directors, leaders, those that are in a position of authority, but there's opportunity here for every individual, right? So no matter what kind of role you're in, you have the opportunity to have this kind of impact on your team health. Leadership is not a position, right? Leadership is the actions that you take as an individual that make you a leader. Somebody put resilient on the word cloud earlier. Did anybody else see that? I think so. I love that. So let's talk about what is resilience just for a moment before we dive into how we maximize team health. Resilience would be described as the ability to recover and recuperate quickly from a difficult or challenging situation. So why is that important for us as healthcare workers, right? In order to build resilience, we have to be able to take and stay in control of our hearts, our minds, and our bodies. This is ultimately your ability to bounce back. And you need that, right? So when we talk about maximizing team health, maximizing resilience, we have to start with defining the team's mission and culture, right? So this is all about what is our purpose and what are our expectations, right? What kind of population are we focused on? Because when the team lacks clarity on the team's priorities, then that's going to lead to individual team members questioning their purpose or their role. And that is not a positive culture. You want to create an open culture where we're all on the same page. We all know the priority. We're all rowing the boat in the same direction, right? So encourage and reinforce that professional respect for lanes, for recognizing other people's strengths, right? So that there are shared expectations about what we do, why we do it, and where we're going, right? Build resilience and team health into the team's processes and strategic plan. Easy enough. If it's a priority, put it on paper. Let's outline it somewhere. Let's talk about it at team meetings. Let's not just say we're going to do it one time and then never check in, right? I talked earlier in the presentation about resilience rounds. value the importance of the team's emotional health. Check in with folks. Or, oops, sorry. Are we taking, a moment when somebody passes away? Are we talking about all of those that we've lost in the past 2 weeks? And how's everybody doing? How's everybody feeling? Right. Foster connection and communication. So, within this, we want to really assess and highlight each other's strengths so that everybody can contribute their best, right? We want to look out for one another. A little bit of a buddy system. If someone's avoiding meetings, if they're separating themselves from the group, if they're voicing irritation, check on those people, right? Hey, you don't quite seem yourself. Name the emotion that you see. You seem a little frustrated. Is everything okay? Is there anything I can do for you? And be really mindful of this, particularly during times of transition, right? If we've got a lot of new team members coming in, if we have new leadership, if there's a new program that's rolling out, if we're restructuring and we've got increased workload, those are the times when you're going to see a lot of that and really need to communicate and again foster that connection. And how many folks out there are working remote or working in a home setting? Do we have where you're primarily kind of by yourself physically? But a few of those folks in the room. I myself have been remote for some time, and I can say that the biggest part of transitioning into that sort of remote space that I really had to focus on sort of that element of connection, was being intentional, because connection happens organically when you're in an office or you're in a hospital. Home-based programs in general, it's a little bit harder. And then certainly if you're working remote, you can feel a little isolated. And that can be disabling in some ways, right? So I definitely appreciate video conferencing, and I never thought that I would say that. I remember in 2020 when things first kind of went, I didn't even know that our phone conference line had video capability. But I learned that year, and then of course, Zoom and Teams sort of took things to a new level, and I definitely appreciate being able to see folks whenever we're meeting together. And face to face, you just can't beat it. So it's really nice to get together with folks and sort of create a consistent forum where we can be together. Celebrate joy and share grief. Right. This is pretty simple. Recognize individual team members' contributions and their accomplishments, right? It might not seem like a big deal to you, but if it's a big deal to them, celebrate that. Be glad for them. Love that, right? Maybe they're downplaying it. Pump them up, right? Celebrate birthdays, and equally recognize loss, right? If they're grieving personally, or if you guys deal with a lot of loss within your own team, just, maybe you have a ritual that you do, whether that's time that's devoted to recognizing the just emotional aspect of the work, or maybe writing sympathy cards and things of that nature to send out to families, doing a debriefing session. Just, take time to recognize the heaviness of that. And then lastly, establishing program expectations and limitations. So it's very, very important to know your program's limitations, right? We've only got so many people. We can only do so much. We can only address X, Y, and Z. And we need to be really realistic about what we can do and what we will do, what we're expected to do, so that when things kind of get overloaded, we're helping to relieve the pressure to address every need, because sometimes you just can't. Like these are how many patients you can see in a day. This is how much you can professionally do for this patient and family. Can't feel bad about the other things, right? And then establish criteria for appropriate referrals, right? Our team is able to handle and we focus on X, Y, and Z, right? If it's this, we refer to this person. If it's this, we refer out to this. So know what you can do and make sure that your team doesn't think they have to solve every need. All right. So in closing, I share an updated photo. If you were on the presentation last year, you might have seen a little younger photo of my Lucy girl. She is my pup and I love her. And so I just wanted to include her on the bottom line slide for achieving and enjoying. Identify the stressors in your life, react appropriately, commit to change where needed. And ask yourself these questions. Remember focusing on these simple concepts. And it doesn't have to be anything grand, guys. 20, 30 minutes a day to do something just for yourself, whatever fills your energy tank, do that. When you get home, before you walk in the door, think about whether you want to focus on achieving or enjoying at home tonight. Act accordingly to that, right? When was the last time you achieved and enjoyed something at work? What about achieving and enjoying with your family or friends? And how recently have you achieved and enjoyed something just for you? Again, really simple concepts. And once you focus on them as key components of your day, I think that you'll see improvement. They're not that hard to implement. So make it happen for you, for your family, for all the important individuals that you care about. Achieve and enjoy. All right, I've got some references here so you know that I didn't make up everything that was in the presentation. And thanks so much. If anybody has any questions, you can certainly take those.
Morgan,
Yeah.
I have a quick question, comment, and thank you. Is very calming, and so I just feel like how you deliver. So like everything connected to this just felt a little extra lovely because of kind of your cadence and presenting. So thank you. My kind of question, comment about the way we look at PTO, the way we think about burnout, the way we think about our commitment to our profession. I'm curious how like the generational differences, now that we have 5 different generations in the workplace, plays into that. And I can think not take PTO depending on kind of the generation. So maybe they're the ones that don't take PTO achieve, right? Because they're ready to see. And then the rest of us, have different motivations. But if that's of interest to you, maybe that's next year. Like, if we get you to do self-care again, maybe you can do something around kind of some of that sort of stuff. I think would be interesting.
Yeah, way to voluntold me, Jenny. Thanks.
Well, I go to so many like self-care burnout things, and like the content last year, and like I'm getting something out of it. So whether you recognize it or not, like you've got good stuff to get doing it.
Absolutely. I think she might have, I don't know if she was breaking up a little bit for you guys or not, but she was sort of commenting about the generational differences between sort of the concepts of like, are you taking time? Are you experiencing burnout, etc. And I don't recall seeing that in the data, Jenny, but I bet that it's there, and that would be interesting to look at I do think that we do see that the younger generations are embracing more self-care activities. And I think that it could even be argued to a fault, in some ways, but protecting themselves and setting those boundaries and knowing, what they're willing to do and where they draw their line in the sand. There's something really positive about that too. So thanks for your comment and for voluntolding me for next year. Wilma's not here, so I might be off the hook.
Oh, it's recorded. We'll share. Just kidding. Well, I really appreciate it, and I feel like I got a lot out of that. I had a question about as team leaders and people that are in positions to provide some self-care for a team or a group. I always feel like when I offer something, I feel like it feels more like a burden to add that to their day. Because then I get, I want to do something kind of out of the norm, but then we get together, we turn off our phones, and then we're worried about, what are the calls that we're missing? What are the things that are building up during that time? And, it's hard to, I guess, how can you make some time and carve out time for a team that isn't going to further burden them within that day? Because I want to do those things, so I don't want to ignore that that's there, but I also don't want to add that extra burden. And then I certainly don't necessarily want to add something away from work that adds extra time that we're asking people to participate in and take away from their other things. Any suggestions from anybody?
I'm going to make a comparison, and I don't know if you'll find it enlightening or if you'll say, meh. Either one is fine. But as you were talking about that, what came to my mind was advanced care planning conversations and serious illness conversations, and how if that's not something that we do all the time, or for clinicians who don't do it all the time, well, they might say the same thing. I don't want to upset the patient. I don't want to burden the family with this. I don't want it to be one extra thing that they're dealing with on top of X, Y, and Z. And what do we say in response to that? We have to normalize these conversations. We have to normalize those behaviors, those expectations, those things that we're doing. It feels that way because we're not doing it all the time. It feels like it's taking something away or it's adding a burden because it's not usual.
Well said. I'm taking it well.
Maybe, I don't know. Consistency might be.
No, I mean, I think, we do lunches and we do some things where we just don't actually add things onto it, but just to have the connection. And I think, and maybe I worry that I want them to get more out of it than really needs to be gotten out of it. Some of that downtime. So, but no, that was very well. Good analogy, and absolutely. So I think I'll continue to stick with it and not worry about the burden it may cause. So.
Well, and I think recognizing that, again, sort of that self-care and that check-in and that resilience round, whatever you want to call it, that it can be different for everyone. So maybe survey the team and say, how would you like to maximize our team health? And maybe you have a few options and then a free text, and see, to them, how do they define that? Because they could define it differently, and maybe there are options to choose from where you guys do something, alternate every other month or whatever. We had a few comments in the chat. Heather agrees with you. She says she always felt guilty, didn't want to be a burden. Now she loves being a consultant. So she's her own boss. Keisha says our department does an annual retreat. We realized it was best to be off campus so that folks didn't run in to see us during that time. There they're spending this time on department goals, and the PM is spent on team building and self-care. I love that.
No, that was excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Morgan. We really appreciate your sharing again this year. Something that I guess we'll normalize and maybe even next year add to it. And learning to do some of these things.
I'm ready to get off the hook.
No,
Thank you guys so much for your time and attention this morning. I appreciate it. Hope that you learn something new or were reminded of a pearl. And we'll talk about
Definitely.
this.
Well,
absolutely.
and thank you guys for all joining us. And tomorrow morning we'll come, if anybody doesn't have any questions, anybody have any questions or anything else for Morgan this morning?
Yeah.
Heather's up there clapping. I can see her.
Yes.
And I also love when we can see each other. And I know that sometimes people don't have cameras, but it's nice when we have people on camera and really can see each other again when we're more remote. So it is nice. We will be starting up again tomorrow morning at 8. We have Tracy Fossilino who'll be with us to talk about some legislations and some policies. And we will be excited to hear that and to see everyone else. I'm laughing. Heather says she put lipstick on for this. I probably need to put some lipstick on for this. But anyway, it was great to see everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to add just a little bit here at the end. Thank you, Lori, for that, for the closing remarks. I did add into the chat a link to an evaluation. We missed that yesterday, but once we finish everything up and we send out an email at the end of the full symposium and post it all on the website, I'll add that back in. But while it's fresh in your head, if you guys could go in and do that. But thank you, Morgan, for all of your information. My background is in education, and so much of that resonates to me as a former teacher as well. Burnout's the reason I'm not in the classroom today. So it's, you know, there's so many parallels between the two industries, and it's a great reminder in all cases to take care of ourselves. So thank you very much for that. All right, thank you guys.